How's it going, everybody? My name is Frank of Mirth Films, and today we're talking about the 7artisans 7.5mm fisheye f2.8 version 2 for micro four thirds cameras. So let's go check it out. The 7artisans fisheye lens comes in at $139.99 and it has a minimum focus distance of 5.9 inches. This lens can be used on all micro four thirds cameras, including your Panasonic, Blackmagic, and Olympus cameras. That 7.5mm focal length is equivalent to 15mm on full frame, which is very usable for wide shots. Regarding ergonomics with this lens has a metal build which feels very nice in the hands, and especially when I'm using the focus and the aperture ring, because this is a manual focusing lens, so you actually have to adjust the aperture right on the lens itself. And it also does have a nice metal cap, so you don't have to worry about the lens getting scratched. Why did I get this lens? Well, first off, I wanted a lens that's going to be great for skateboarding, and fisheye lenses go hand in hand with skateboarding. And secondly, I wanted a lens that I could use for when I was getting up close shots of musicians on stage. There's a lot of times where I do multicam productions, and this lens is great for soloing out one person. So I have a bunch of Panasonic cameras that I use, and I put these lenses on them when I use them on the stage, so that way I don't have to worry about shooting from a far distance. I can have the lens nice and close to the musician right when I'm shooting, so it's a huge perk to have this in my arsenal. So let's just get down into the nitty-gritty. Photography. A lot of people might be using micro four thirds cameras for photography. Olympus is a photographer's camera first and foremost, and micro four thirds lenses are universal, so you can use this on an Olympus camera. And I love this for photography because not only is it great for concerts, something that I'm very used to doing, it's also great for nature as well. If you want to capture a cool landscape with some distortion in the corner from the fisheye, it's something I really like to use. And in fact, I'm right now using a 14-35 Canon lens on my Canon EOS R, and there's no distortion, barely any, and there's times where I really want that distortion. So by using this lens itself, I know I'm going to get that look that I'm looking for. It's just something different, and when you're shooting photography, video, different is better, and it pushes your boundaries. So for me, this lens has pushed my boundaries in the way I think about approaching photography. So moving on to the pros and cons section of this video. First, like I just said, the price is spot on, $139.99 US dollars. You can't go wrong with this lens. Even if it's something that you don't like, $139.99 is not a huge risk. Or if you're just getting into micro four thirds photography or photography in general, and micro four thirds was a system that you picked up, I would pick this up as a second or third lens. I know when I first got the Panasonic G7 back in like 2017, besides the 14-42mm lens that came with the Panasonic camera, I did want something, again, for skateboarding, something with distortion. So $139.99, getting my feet wet with photography, videography in micro four thirds. That's why I got this lens, and now I can trust this lens to do what I needed to do here on out. The second thing I really like about this lens is the sharpness of the image, and there was a few times during my concert photography career that I didn't have a fisheye lens for my full frame camera, and I thought I was screwed, and I didn't really like using micro four thirds for any photography, but I opened my mind because at that point in time I had no other choice. So bringing this into the concert photography pit, I was very impressed. Alright, my last pro that I'm bringing up is the fact that it is an f2.8 aperture. Yes, that equals 5.6 for micro four thirds cameras, but I mean, if you're shooting wide and you want to capture everything in the frame all in focus, I'd be shooting f5.6, shooting my fisheye on my full frame camera. So a lot of those kit lenses that you get with micro four thirds cameras are a variable aperture between 4 and 5.6, so that's even higher of an f-stop. So f2.8, that's really good deal for $139.99. Not only was it a good deal, but I was even able to use this lens for astrophotography. So a micro four thirds camera, half the sensor size, letting in half the light for your camera compared to a full frame camera, still was able to pull off an astrophotography shot. And I got to give a huge thanks to the f2.8 aperture, because I probably wouldn't have been able to achieve that with any of those kit lenses. There are a few cons that we have to talk about when it comes to using the 7.5 7artisans fisheye lens, and the first one is that it is a manual focusing lens. And yeah, that's just being nitpicky. You know, you are paying $139, you pay for what you get, but at the same time, it would be nice to have an autofocus feature built within this lens. lens. But just a quick tip to help you nail focus with this lens is make sure to turn focus assist on. The next thing that I have to bring up is that this lens is going to have a tough time putting on a screw-on ND filter for two reasons. One, the lens bulges out. That's just the nature of a fisheye. There's a lot of fisheyes out there that don't allow that, even on an expensive price point. And number two, the lens hood is stuck to the lens itself. While it's nice and metal, it will protect some of your lens. That is a downside. So, you know, if you are trying to get a waterfall shot or something during the day, you're gonna have a tough time. So just keep that in mind. Lastly, this is my biggest issue with this lens, is that the build quality may be nice, but it doesn't last that long. And when I say that, I've had a few times where on the back of the lens itself, I've had the back piece of the lens actually get loose and screws pop off the lens. That will affect everything when it comes to the lens. The sharpness, the focus, everything. So, you know, maybe if you have the budget, invest in something a little bit better than this. That was a huge killer for me. If you have any questions about the 7.5 7artisans fisheye lens, please let me know in the comments section down below. And even if you used it, if you have had a good experience, bad experience, whatever it may be, we would love to hear your thoughts on the lens. My name is Frankie of Mirth Films, and thank you so much for watching today's video.